You're listening to the Blue Ridge True Crime Podcast, bringing you compelling true crime stories from the Appalachian Mountains and beyond. I'm your host, Alfred Dockery. Grab your hat and a lantern, and let's get on the trail. Today's episode is the unfinished history of the Hillsville Courthouse shooting. March 14, 1912, the Carroll County Courthouse in Hillsville, Virginia. A typical day in a typical term of court. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and small town gossip. Floyd Allen is on trial for assaulting two deputies and freeing their prisoners, his nephews, Wesley and Sidna Edwards. He's found guilty and sentenced to a year in prison. He stands up and says, "Gentlemen, I ain't a-goin'." Gunfire breaks out and the courtroom descends into chaos as more than 50 shots ring out. When the smoke clears, 6 people are dead or dying, including the judge, the sheriff, and the Commonwealth's attorney. 9 are wounded, and the Allens, a family of local mountaineers, are on the run. Today I'm delighted to speak with Dr. Travis Rountree, author of Hillsville Remembered, Public Memory, Historical Silence, and Appalachia's Most Notorious Shootout. Dr. Rountree, please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Dr. Travis Rountree. I am at Western Carolina University. I'm an associate professor here. I am the assistant department head here as well right now. I got my undergraduate at James Madison University, my master's at Appalachian State University, and my PhD from University of Louisville. I started this project when I was at Appalachian during an Appalachian history course in an Appalachian history course, and it was really phenomenal. And then it became a dissertation, which then became a book with University of Kentucky Press. I live here. I live here in Silva. Our Western Carolina is located in Cullowhee. It's the land of the Cherokee, and yeah, I love it. I love teaching here, researching, and doing all the great things that mountain folks
All
do.
right. Now, for our listeners who aren't familiar with the story, what happened in Hillsville in March of 1912 and what's its place in Appalachian history?
What happened is two boys got in a fight at their uncle's church over a girl. One of the boys had pulled a piece of red ear corn that said that he could kiss the girl. They kissed. The girl's boyfriend got mad, right? And so there's a big scuffle in the church house of their uncles. And what happens is the law comes and gets them both. But so the deputies take him past Floyd's house in spite. Floyd was like a father to them. And so they take him by, and Floyd gets upset clearly and allegedly knocks one of the sheriffs or one of the deputies in the head with a pistol from his own pistol, not Floyd's. Frees the nephews, and so eventually it catches up with Floyd. The deputies take off back downtown or back to town. Catches up with Floyd. He's put on trial and for a bunch of other charges as well, but basically for freeing the nephews. And exactly what you said at the beginning, Floyd was convicted. When the judge read it, Floyd was convicted. He stood up and said, "Gentlemen, I ain't going." And he went to reach in his jacket for something, and someone thought that he was pulling a gun. Floyd was not packing that. Floyd did not have a gun that day. But so shots rang out in the courthouse. Nobody knows who shot the first shot. It's a conjecture. And then, so, as you said, 5 people died and then 7 were wounded during the shootout. The judge was killed. The sheriff was killed. Floyd escaped and went out of the front door and literally hid behind the Confederate statue and was shooting back at the local folks there. Floyd was hit in the leg. He was apprehended immediately after. And there's what was a hotel at the time. They found him and, took him up there. And he said he wasn't going to go to jail. And there's actually a picture, allegedly again, of him trying to slit his throat from going to jail. And it's in the papers and stuff like that. And his son Claude was caught later. Sidna Allen, Floyd's brother, and his nephew Wesley Edwards were caught out west several months later as well. And they were all apprehended and incarcerated. And Floyd and Claude were the 47th and 48th people to be put to death by electrocution in the state of Virginia. And of course, so we have the women who have to are left their husbands, brothers, sons are incarcerated. were put to death or shot, right? They're left to pick up the slack, and there's still animosity there in Hillsville. So, fitting this within the larger construction of Appalachia shows these sort of small skirmishes that would break out across the region. We get this idea of feuding. Altoona Waller has a great book called Feuding. If you want to read more about that, that's more about the Hatfields and McCoys. But we see there's more to it, right? So we see that there's a political sense. The Allens were Democrats, the town government were Republican, and they went back and forth a lot, just like any small mountain town continues still today. So we see a lot of that. We also see within the larger idea of Appalachia, this idea of the hillbilly, right, image, or the violent hillbilly image that gets tossed around. The media picked up on that real quick, and that was in the paper a lot as well too. We also see the idea of the moonshiner sort of image in Floyd and Sidna did have a reputation of running their own liquor. The other thing, too, a museum that does a really good job of setting the context of this is the Mount Airy Regional Museum in Mount Airy. They set a really good kind of context of this thing happening within the larger idea or region of Appalachia. But yeah, that's the gist of the actual shootout itself. And there's lots of other descriptions. I do want to talk about this one book. So this is the Carroll County Courthouse Tragedy by Ronald W.
Mm-hmm.
Hall. This is like the definitive book to go to if you're looking about anything about Hillsville. I met him. He's an incredible source of information. I'm super grateful for like the research that he gave me as well too.
I will put that book on my list of books to read.
Yes, it's good.
Okay, I understand you have a personal connection to this story.
Yeah, so the way and this is something that's not out of Hillsville, people hear this a lot, or folks from Hillsville. So my grandfather, my mom's dad, my papa, and my nana were in Hillsville. They were doing the fall thing where they travel around the mountains and visit different areas and stuff. And this guy came up to my papa and said, "Hey, are you Alan?" And my papa was like, "Yeah." And the guy was like, "You need to get the hell out of town right now." And they're like, "Okay." Like he was, which is surprising because my papa wasn't going to back down, but he was like, "Okay." And they left and ran out of town. He told me that story right when I was trying to determine what I was going to write for that paper in that Appalachian history class. Yeah, that's my small sort of connection to that, but it is meaningful and really piqued my interest. And my grandfather told me, he was like, "The shootout happened, and this is what caused that," and that's how I really got involved with that. And I don't know. There's my great grandfather was an orphan, so we don't know about the actual connection. But I talked to one of my folks that I interviewed for the book and for the dissertation. He was like, "Yeah, there's a lot of Allens around here." It's fun to think of, but either way.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to give people a little bit of a feel for the major players in this story. Now, I know there's a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, so we may want
Mhm.
to economize just a little bit. Obviously, the whole story revolves around one person, and that is Floyd Allen. But let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about who is involved in this story and in this incident.
So Floyd is the guy that was put on trial. He's the main player. He's on my book. He's got the like best mustache you've ever seen, right?
His
I tried to
mustache
draw it.
game is strong.
It's like award-winning mustache game. I tried, and it just, I look like a sleazy Doc Holliday. It wasn't great. But yeah, so Floyd was the one put on trial, and he was known as to lose his temper. Like but he ran a store at one point, and and the one thing I want to like reiterate is these were all responsible citizens in Hillsville, right? Like these men, they were not like in a gang or anything like that. They were all responsible folks. So Floyd was the big one. His son Claude was the one that was also electrocuted with Floyd, not with Floyd, but after him. Went to business school, like in Raleigh, so he was well educated. Right, he moved back to Hillsville to take care of his Frances, Floyd's wife, and Claude's mother was very not well, not healthy. So Claude came home to take care of her. So he was always around, and they say he had a girlfriend, and we'll talk about the ballads later. But Claude's ballad is really fascinating because he turns into this sort of that's like defending his father. So that's Floyd and Claude. Then you have Sidna, and actually Frances is another sort of main player. Like she's around
Oh,
Floyd's
yeah.
wife. and you see a lot of her, and she appears in a lot of different ways. Then you have Sidney Allen, who is, or Sidney Allen, as some people refer to him, who was, he was, again, like, big community member. He went out west to the Klondike, to Alaska, and made a bunch of money running a store on wheels sort of stuff. Made a ton of money, was able to come back to Hillsville and build this huge Victorian house, which you can go see. They've renovated a lot of it. When I first saw it, it was, actually, I have a picture of it. Oh, no. It looked like this. And this person went and took a bunch of photos when it was not in the greatest shape. But anyway, Sidna had that house built, and they lost the house. The house was attached to the trial, and he and his wife Betty lost the house. Sidna had two small daughters, and his granddaughter actually wrote this. Sidna also, she published this, which is a collection of his autobiography, which I have an original copy of. A
Nice.
friend of mine found it. Yeah. So we have Sidna's sort of recollection of the entire shootout, which is fascinating. And then his granddaughters like sort of take on it too. So that's Sidna and Betty. You have Sidna was the one that ran out west, and Wesley Edwards, his nephew, went with him. So Wesley's kind of another player because Wesley's girlfriend led Maud I Roller was her
Oh,
name.
my
Like, this is the
goodness.
best names ever. Yeah. So Maud led the detectives out to where Sidna and Wesley were hiding out. I think it was in Moyne Iowa. Yep. Yeah. And that's in the newspaper and everything too. Like, it's this sort of, it's like girlfriend leads to arrest of outlaws sort of situation. She apparently got paid, or her dad got paid. I don't know if that's all. Again, allegedly. And then you have Dexter Goad, which is another really great name. And Floyd actually calls him his. So Dexter Goad was the clerk of court, and he was there that day too. He got hit, but he was not killed. But yeah, he and Floyd had big beef against each other, and just picked at each other a lot. And yeah, Floyd in his last sort of death confessional said that he was like the sworn enemy of Dexter Goad, which is cool because not cool in the way of history. Claude actually wrote out Floyd's last few words, so it's wild. Um, yeah, but those are the sort of key
Okay.
players. Yeah.
Now, the Allen family, in my research, it appears that they have this extraordinary history of
Mhm.
shootouts, disputes, property problems, indictments, trials, and a lot than one last minute commutation or pardon. Again, there's a lot there, but let's hit a couple of the highlights.
So I think for that too, like I said too, Floyd and Sidna were both caught up in running liquor a little bit too, but they had honest stores, honest places of business as well too. And apparently, like, Sidna had a counterfeiting thing against him
Yes.
too. We don't know about, but there's a lot of little things that we see that led up to this. They were honorable citizens, but they were doing some stuff on the side, I think too.
Yeah. Now, in my next question, I was going to ask you to characterize the Allen family, and we've already done that to a pretty decent degree. The things that
Hmm.
stood out to me were that they had license for legal distilleries. It looks like they did some illegal distilling on the side. My understanding is that Floyd Allen in his lifetime was shot 13 times, 5 times by family members. And I have to say, I'm impressed, but they do seem to have been a family they were landowners, they were prosperous, they
Hmm.
were active in politics, they were movers and shakers in politics. There's a little bit of undercurrent of where they are not entirely on board with the law and legality, but they are a well established family with, I would think, a solid reputation in the community
Hmm.
and a reputation for leave these people alone or they will shoot you.
Accurate. Yeah. I, yeah. And we see a lot, like, we see a lot in the court transcripts and stuff as well too, which William Bill Lord published a lot of the court transcripts as well too. We can see their reputation around them. The other thing that I might be in the gun, sorry, pun intended, but there's a play that's written about him, about the shootout, and we can talk about that later. But that really depicts their reputation in the town too. The deputy or the sheriff didn't carry a gun because I do not want to appear like I'm afraid of the Allen men. And that's why he didn't carry a gun. He practiced one, but he didn't have one. So that's something to keep in mind as we think about the reputation of the Allens in the area. And yeah, I mean, they ran for public office. They had different positions. But yeah, they definitely had a reputation. Yeah. And even now, right? Like folks, there's still some tension there, I have to say. Yeah.
Now let's cut back to the shootout in the courthouse and talk about the aftermath and what we find when the shooting stops and the smoke clears.
So what happens like right after the shootout? There's a sent to the governor that says send troops immediately. And so what happens is troops come, and so do reporters. So there's a huge onset of people in Hillsville, and there's a great picture of the reporters standing outside, like near the courthouse and around there, and it becomes mayhem, right? The Baldwin Felts agency is put in charge of seeking them out, and they were involved with the mining wars. They have a vast history in Appalachia. Matewan, if you've ever seen that, like just lots of steeped history in Appalachia, but they're sent to go find the Allens who escaped, right? Sidney and Claude and Wesley and a couple of others. So we get these cool instances. It's a massive manhunt, and it's front page news in the New York Times.
Yes.
It's in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, but also New York Times. It's front page news in that till the Titanic sinks. And there's actually an article that's like, we had this big thing, the Titanic sank. What do we care about like these like outlaws? So it's really interesting. But anyway, it's front page news right after. And so what's really fascinating too is you get all these, it's almost like a reciprocal thing. Like the Baldwin Felts agency will read the newspapers, or like the newspapers will talk to the Baldwin Felts, and it's like a wild goose chase. And then you have some of the Allen folks, like community members, that are hiding them out or like giving them wrong clues.
Yes.
Like Betty Allen. I love this. First off, the newspaper said there was a big shootout at their house and that she got shot and killed. And she was like, no. Like in the play, she's like, I guess they got me. And it is like just the whole place roars because it's totally made up, right?
Yes.
So, the detectives come to Betty for a picture of her husband, of Sidna. And so she finds this like old picture of Sidna that's like years old. And he looks like some little out. It is not a recent picture at all of him. So she really misleads them to another thing, to another trail. You hear, especially in the newspaper accounts, you'll hear that there's been sightings of folks or sightings of Claude or secret hiding places, which he really was hid out. The other thing, and it's what we would call like fake news now, or what was, I don't know if that's still a thing, but it came out that Dexter Goad, that Dexter Goad's daughter, Jezebel Goad, which like these names, like you just cannot get any better than that. Like that Jezebel Goad was helping her father reload on the steps, right? Yes. That he was shooting from the steps. She wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And so what happens too, so we get this huge thing in the paper and the governor reads it and his wife reads it. And they literally write her it's in the governor's wife's memoir. They cast a medal for Jezebel Goad for her act of bravery. It's a whole thing. They have it in the Historical Society Museum in Hillsville. And actually somebody approached Jezebel in the 60s and asked her, it was a TV station. They said, hey, would you like to say something? It was a reunion of the shootout. And Jezebel was like, I'd rather not speak to any of this. I will not revisit that again. Do not ask me or contact me anymore. And so you get this silence is power thing, right, with her as well. Like she still holds this power and she's not going to talk about it. Also, like trauma that was associated with that. So the aftermath of the shootout, it was chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And it until Claude gave up and until they found Sidna and Wesley Edwards, like it was still pretty chaotic there too. It's in the newspaper accounts, the media accounts are really fascinating because, of course, like I mentioned, we have the start of the hillbilly image, and so there's a great political cartoon of this guy like shooting up the. There's one side it looks like a sort of Chicago gangster, and the other side there's a. It looks like the judge where the judge sits, and it's like pulpit thing, and it says no north, no south, all Wild Willie West, and the guy's looks like a gangster sort of thing. Um, so it's really fascinating. You get those depictions, and then you get like Floyd and Sidna both actually go from this like sort of vicious outlaw, violent hillbilly image, right? To where Floyd turns into this like he gets captured and is like in jail and feels really regretful and like awful about what he did. And there's this like drawing of him that appears in the paper of this sort of like old sad old man and repentant of what he did. Sydney, you don't get a whole lot that he was forgiven, and he when he was in jail, he did a lot of woodworking and stuff, but that's not really talked about. But yeah, with Floyd, you get this total image, and the same with Claude. He goes from again this sort of outlaw image to this guy that was just trying to defend his father in a gunfight. And so it's I love the media coverage is just so fast because we see that stuff still right now. Images of Appalachia. That's what I work against. I have a career about that,
Yeah.
but we still see a lot of it. So
Yeah,
that's
let's take a brief detour into the newspapers here for a second. Now, I
yeah.
went and looked at what people were writing on March 15th. And from the headline from the Richmond Times Dispatch, state troops are ready to march. Rides, rifles and ammunition sent to Hillsville from Roanoke. Governor offers $3,000 reward. The Charlotte Observer, court officials slain. The Washington Post, desperados kill judge, prosecutor, and sheriff in Virginia courtroom. The New York Times. The New York Times, it was that period of time where they had a headline and a subhead. Outlaws slay judge in court. Also kill prosecutor and sheriff at Hillsville, Virginia. 9 others wounded. 20 mountaineers failing to rescue prisoner flee posse in pursuit. Prisoner just convicted. Now, the fun thing about all of these articles is they all reference mud splattered men with rifles on horseback assaulting the courtroom from outside. It appears that early reports, the newspapers were not aware that the call, or I should probably say the gunfire, was coming from inside the house.
My
But it
favorite
is
depiction is
remarkably sensational.
oh, so much. My favorite is the that Allen clan rode up on the courthouse on Shetland ponies. just like a total Yosemite Sam. Like it is just eh, it's wild, right? This is what we still see sensationalism done in the media now, but that is like another level. It's just and it continued for a long time. And what's really cool too is in my research, and that's for the first year or two at least after the shootout, or at least the first few months. I'm sorry. But we also get papers from across the country, the Kansas City Star. I have an account from an African American newspaper that's basically these white people are killing each other. Too bad. It's a really fascinating account of it. And we really don't even the Times Dispatch, the Roanoke, I think it's Roanoke Times, I think. I can't remember the name of that one. But that's the closest newspaper to the area besides the Times Dispatch. Yeah, it's really interesting. Also, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so this holds a close place to my heart as well too. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's really fascinating.
Let's talk about the fallout a little bit. So what happened to the some of the principal players in this shootout? How did they wind up doing in the long run there?
Like I said, Floyd and Claude were both put to death or electrocuted. and Sidna and Wesley Edwards, and I think there was like a couple other people. Victor, their brother didn't get. I don't think he was charged, but I know that Sidna and Wesley Edwards were in jail for a good and more like probably longer than it was a while, but they eventually got pardoned by the governor. I mean, like Frances Allen, she had to. Floyd's wife had to go and live with her other son. I think his name was Victor as well, too, if I'm not mistaken. But she had to go live with him outside of the state of
Mm-hmm.
Virginia. Betty Allen, Sidna's wife, had to start doing laundry, and she lost the house that they built together. This huge house that they had built together. So she really had to go pick up the pieces. And as far as the other folks, there was a huge animosity in Hillsville about it. But that was once the sort of everything settled, Sidna eventually moved with his daughter and lived with her. Sidna Allen did, and lived with his daughter in North Carolina somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. But yeah, they just left, and it was not something that you talked about at all. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, how everything happened. I think Dexter Goad eventually served out his role there as clerk of court, and I think he did one more other office and then retired.
One of the stories that stuck out to me was Floyd Allen's wife, Frances. Apparently, at one
Mhm.
point, sent a card into the Galax Post Herald asking for people to help out to get money for the legal fees and such. And that she did this after someone burned down the barn. And that was the thing I think that most people in Appalachia dreaded the most, because if someone
Mhm.
came and burned your barn, generally the barn and the contents of the barn would be a substantial portion, if not most, of your capital.
Yeah, and what we see from Francis in that is it's pretty horrific and sad. We have a woman that's, I mean, her husband was clearly like rambunctious. Some couple of her sons were too, but this is like a last plea that she's asking. I need help, and she was not a person to ask for help, from what I've heard, right? But we get this sort of, it's not pathetic, it's like just a sad sort of plea for money, begging for money to help her husband. And I will say too that they had a lot, not so much for Floyd, but for Claude, tons of women's agencies like sent him letters, that sent letters to the governor, sent letters to other political folks for pardoning of Claude. They're in the archives in the Library of Virginia, tons of them. And I think that was like Claude was like Francis's, she had other sons, but he was definitely her favorite. And so she's got both of them in jail and are put to death evidently. And they said that one of the things that gives me chills too is that they said at Floyd and Claude's funeral that she like wouldn't even look at Floyd's casket. Like she was like weeping over Claude so much and so bad. And the woman who played Frances plays it's incredible. She is the star of the show, in my opinion. Like she is just, we don't hear from the women side of it. Like in everything that we have here, a lot of the accounts, we don't hear a lot from them. And so I think it's critical that we go back and hear those voices now and how they were affected. Like you talk about the after effects. Oh my gosh, like they had nothing, right? And had to rebuild. And I think that newspaper article really shows that sort of desperation that they were living in after the shootout.
No. I'd like to talk about the legacy, and kind of in three parts. I want to talk a little bit about how the town feels about this story. I want to touch on the ballads, and I'd like to
Mhm.
talk about the museums, because that seems completely fascinating. So let's start with the town. Where are they on this story? Are they all for it, all against it, or splintered?
So it's interesting as an outsider, right? I
Yeah,
can't speak for the town itself, but my perception of this, and it may be wrong, but it's just from my perception. There's a lot of animosity still. The plays that I mentioned, and I've heard this over and over, that the plays have led to a healing of the town,
good.
right? The plays are just, they take place in the actual courthouse.
Wow.
They have they're performed by the descendants of the people who were there. I think, that question of like, where is Hillsville now? I think look to that play. That's where you see the heart of this town and something that blew it apart. Wrong choice of words again, but like something that splintered it
Yeah.
so much, that something like this that depicts them so both sides, even though it is Allen heavy, like both sides and compassionately, that helped lead to drawing them together. There's still a lot of stuff there, talking to people, and there's undercurrents, but I feel like that really helped to heal it. And they're proud of that too, right? It is slammed. Like I went and saw it, and it's a 3 hour long play, and you're sitting in your seat like for 3 hours. There's an intermission. And also the guy Frank Levering I met, who was from Hillsville originally, was there, and it was like I've done research on this play forever, and it's just so cool to meet him, and he was super gracious and wanted to hear more. So yeah, I think, yeah, that demonstrates where the town is now.
Let's talk about the two ballads, Sidna
Oh, yeah.
Allen and Claude Allen. I believe I found one on YouTube and listened to it. I think it was Claude, but right this second,
Mhm.
I am not 100% sure. Tell us about the ballads and tell us about how they differ.
I've got again in the book a reference. There's a whole chapter on the ballads, and there's an article that I want to like cite. The guy's name is like totally leaving my memory right now, but it's in the
Okay.
chapter, so check it out. That has written about this before, but I add more to it considering the history and the rhetorical circulation of all of it and how this creates two different sides. So we have the Sidna Allen ballad, which represents Sidna or Sydney. I think it's called Sydney Allen. He's like the violent hillbilly. There's a line where he pushes the judge against the wall and blows him away. And so we get this sort of imagery of him, and it's like this sort of violent imagery of him in the courthouse. And Sidney he was still known to be violent, but like Floyd was the violent one, in my opinion. Um, so and there's different variations of Sidney, and whoever is singing the ballads, it will be one or the other. They will not sing both because they'll take one side or the other. So that's the Sidney Allen ballad, and there's obviously several different variations of that. Then you have Claude Allen, and Claude starts with like, come listen to this tale of someone who is like brave Claude Allen, who was trying to defend his dad. And then it ends with either his wife or his mother weeping by his grave. So you get this sort of, called like a parlor ballad, or like a sort of mournful sort of thing over Claude, who becomes this folk hero, right? And several people have performed. Frank Prophet performed that. Doc Watson, I have a version of his. Like I found the record of him and Clarence Ashley performing it, which is super cool. Found it in Cincinnati, and I was like, oh my god. But yeah, both of those are very different, and you don't really hear. I know a lot of folks who are ballad collectors, and they've not really heard much of them. Um, but yeah, they take one side or the other, never both. And again, showing two different sides of the shootout. Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about the museums. I understand there's the Carroll County Historical Society and Museum, the
Mhm.
Mount Airy Museum of Regional History, and apparently the Harmon Museum.
So there,
How do they? How are their takes on this? How do they differ?
so it's really fun to think about. This is like part of my book that I just love to write, because I'm just a big public memory person, and which means it's a place that has anxiety around it and has a lot of history to it and provides a sense of affect to us as people that go there. So the Carroll County Historical Museum basically tells the story, and it's got a lot of Sidney Allen's woodworking, and you start with that and you work your way backwards, and it's got like the metal I mentioned about Jezebel Goad. It's got like a wooden rendition of the shootout, like of all the men, which is cool. Um, and then you follow around, and they have a poster board of like details around the shootout, newspaper clippings and stuff like that, that are probably not the actual newspaper, but that they just, somebody looks like it's a museum. A lot of it's been copied and stuff. But again, a lot of stuff. And of course, you have the courthouse there. So you can go upstairs and go to the courthouse and see the bullets that are still in the steps. And that's where the play is performed. And so it's a powerful place. And I believe that was the clerk of court's office, I think it was the treasurer's office where the museum is now. And then you go to the Mount Airy Museum, which is so Hillsville is like vernacular. So it's a lot of remains on story and local folklore, local stories. You go to Mount Airy and all of it's like official, like it's government sanctioned. They have money. They have like little QR codes that you scan. And of course, it's like a bunch of Andy Griffith, like Mayberry stuff in there, which is great and fun and fine. Right. And then they have the sort of board with carpet on it that tells the story of Hillsville. And it's retold, like I said, in the context of Appalachia and the violence in Appalachia. There's a moonshine still, supposedly Floyd's, and pictures of different things. And so it's told in this context of that. It's a fine retelling of it, I think. And they rely a lot. It's the shootout of the century or something like that. It's what they called it. And then you go to the Harmon store, which is like so fun. Like it's this guy's store. It's this Western store, and he's got cowboy boots and Wrangler stuff. But then you just go in this back room, and it's this huge collection of historical stuff. They have like the little Pioneer fireplace and tomahawks and all this type of stuff and farming equipment. And then you go to the other side, and it's the actual newspapers that were out, like when they look like the actual newspapers under glass. So it's like through the whole series of the shootout. Supposedly Floyd's saddlebags, but I don't know. Who knows? Lots and lots of pictures of the family, lots of the Allens and lots of the Goads and just different sorts of stuff. So you go around, make your way around the shootout, and then it ends. Well, before you get to the end, there's like a 2-headed calf that's stuffed. I'm like, okay, cool, great. So awesome. So it continue. And then at the end is a exhibit on the Baldwin Felts. And it's this praising of the Baldwin Felts agency. It's a very sort of positive view. So I found that really interesting as well there. Yeah, all three, one's like Hillsville itself is very vernacular, like this is where it happened. Like, we're proud of this, but also it's something that divides us. And then in Mount Airy, it's like, this is this thing that happened in Appalachia, in our region. And then at Harmon's, it's just a bunch of vernacular. Here's just a bunch of stuff that I collected, and create your own adventure of the shootout, which is great. I think all of them are different ways of constructing the story. I talk about, coin a term, rhetorical remembering, which means like, the history of the shootout is remembered rhetorically in different ways, right? Through each retelling of retelling of the shootout in the museum. So it's really, I don't know, it's just cool. And I'm also like a archivist, and so it's cool to go there and see all of those things.
Indeed. Okay. In closing, is there any place I can send people to see your work, or any particular piece of work you'd like me to send them to?
The book.
Yes.
The book is so remembered. Yeah, buy it at your local bookstore. City Lights is great. They have it. City Lights here in Silva. Order from them. I have a lot of different publications out as well, too. A couple of book chapters. TravisRountree.com. I'm going to plan on updating that soon and putting all of my CV up there with my couple of book chapters on there. I did another sort of Hillsville thing. I did one on Robert Earl Keen, who's a Texas singer-songwriter.
All right. I'm going to close with a quick reminder to our listeners to like and subscribe, and hey, maybe leave a comment. That's it for this episode of the Blue Ridge True Crime Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more people find the show. Until next time, I'll look for you on the back roads.